Managing water in arid landscapes has never been easy. Let's take a trip to the western United States through the Walker River Basin. Nestled between the peaks of the Sierra Nevada range of eastern California and the Great Basin Desert of Nevada, this river sustains agriculture, ecosystems, and people. As in other arid regions in the western United States, this river is fed by annual winter snowpack, which supplies water through spring, summer, and fall months. But as our climate grows warmer and drier, water scarcity is a growing concern for farmers, tribal communities, and conservationists who navigate a web of competing water uses.
My family started farming in this valley in the 1860s, so we've been here a long time. All of our crops require water, and we of course live in an arid area where everything must be irrigated. There's virtually no non-irrigated crops produced in this area. So we rely heavily on that water. That is the basis for our whole farming existence really in this area. We worry a lot about climate change because we rely on it so heavily. We would be among the most affected by dramatic climate change or dramatic change in precipitation in the mountains.
Funded by a grant from the United States Department of Agriculture, a team of researchers with the SNOWPACS Project is trying to understand how water users and water allocation systems in the Walker River Basin can adapt to a changing climate.
I'm Elizabeth Cobley, and I'm one of the researchers on the SNOWPACS project. I have done a lot of the work early on in the project, looking into our case study in the Walker Basin and trying to understand how we can develop alternative institutions to allocate water in order to meet a wider variety of stakeholder needs. All of our water is distributed under a system called prior appropriation in the West, and that's based on water rights. And folks who have older or more senior water rights have more security and less risk, and folks who have more junior water rights have a little less security. And that's because when there's not enough water in the system to meet all of the needs, the junior users forego their use of water. They have to give up essentially using water before any of those senior users do. And so that's the typical system of priority in most places in the West.
In the Walker River Basin, Topaz and Bridgeport reservoirs were built in the upper river reaches to store snowmelt from the Sierra Nevada to help ensure year-round water availability. Snowmelt that flows from the reservoirs through the east and west streams converge in Mason Valley and then flow through the Walker River Paiute Reservation and finally to Walker Lake. Water storage and releases from upstream reservoirs are managed by a federally appointed water master.
I'm Joanne Sarkeesian. I'm the federal water master for the Walker River Decree. What our office does is based on the natural flow in the river every day of the year. Every morning we decide how much water is available and what the priority year is. Our oldest right in the system is 1859, which is the tribe's right in Wabusca. Then we go 1860 to 1914, based on when they originally began using that water. So the older priority years get the water before the juniors. And that's where your senior and junior come in. If there's not enough water, then the farmers can't farm. The water is their livelihood.
The Walker River Paiute tribe, who holds the oldest water right in the basin, has not always received its full water allocation. In the late 1980s, the tribe filed a lawsuit against the Walker River Irrigation District and the upstream agricultural water users in an effort to reconcile this issue.
So we're actually wrapping up, I believe it was over 100 years water settlement for the tribe, specifically for groundwater and irrigation water, that will ensure that our groundwater is protected and also the water that is allowed for us to come from upstream here to the reservation, but not only here, but also to the lake. So we always view water as life. Everything comes from water, and we are considered the stewards of the land. Everything uses waters from our plants, our animals, our medicines. It's genetically embedded inside of all of our bodies as well.
In watersheds like the Walker Basin, climate change is changing the balance. Snow serves as a natural reservoir, gradually melting and releasing water during spring and summer. As our climate warms, more winter precipitation is falling as rain than snow, shrinking total snowpack and leading to earlier snowmelt. Wet periods are getting wetter and dry periods are getting drier, which impacts all downstream users.
So basically what we see more on the scale of extremes. So we've had the most two impactful or devastating droughts within just my tenure, the last 10 years here. And we've also seen two of the three top heaviest water years on record during that same time frame. So there is definitely a lot of change that's been noticed as a result of climate change within our district and within our basin.
What many water users in the western United States already do to adapt to changing water supply and demand conditions is to buy, sell, or lease water rights as part of water markets.
So water markets are institutions or sets of rules that facilitate voluntary exchanges of water between willing buyers and sellers. And they can be designed a lot of different ways.
In the Walker Basin, water markets have always allowed farmers to sell their lands and water rights. Farmers have also been allowed to lease a portion of their water to their downstream neighbor during water-short years. Another type of water market, operated by the Walker River Irrigation District, allows farmers with storage water rights to lease these waters to other farmers. These types of transactions have helped farmers, especially junior water right holders, secure the water they need to grow crops during water-short years.
To be a junior right water holder is a tough business. We used to get about 7 out of 10 years that were good water years. Now it seems like it's about 3 or 4 out of 10. When February 1st comes, I make my decision on where I'm going to go in the spring, because generally by February 1st you have a good handle on what the snowpack's going to be. In general, because I'm a junior right holder, I generally leave 30% of my land idle and I rotate it. So if a drought comes along in that period, then I have to make a choice. And I have sources that people have property that they held water rights, and I kind of have a line on those people, and they work with me, and I buy as much water as I can, but it doesn't always happen.
So in cases like Pete Fanili's ranch, water markets can help move water to where it is most needed. Other larger agricultural operations, like Perry & Sons, also benefit from leasing water.
This farm started in 1979. David Perry, who is the owner, he grew up in Lockwood. His parents and grandparents, they farmed in Lockwood. But then he wanted to expand, and he came to Mason Valley just because of good dirt and plentiful water, and the water gets recharged here because of the Walker River going through the valley.
Part of the strategy of some growers is to lease farmland along with its water rights.
It definitely has to come with the water, you know. Otherwise, I mean, if the ground is good and somebody doesn't have enough water, we have so much water we can move water from one ranch on a temporary basis to another one, or company loves to lease or acquire the ground because it gives you a lot more acres to go around with different crops, so you can have a good rotation. Lettuces, onions, broccoli, you know, cauliflower, so you can keep moving the crops around.
Some growers in the basin have switched from legacy crops like alfalfa and grass hay to vegetables. However, this switch involves increased investment in agricultural labor, irrigation technologies, harvesting equipment, processing, storage facilities, considerable knowledge and expertise in vegetable crop cultivation, and more. While agriculture is the major water use for water in the Walker Basin, it isn't the only reason water is important here. At the end of the river sits Walker Lake. This lake and surrounding lands are the ancestral home of the Walker River Paiute tribe, provide important habitat for birds and fish, and bring tourists to Mineral County. Because of upstream river diversions, lake levels over time have diminished and salinity has increased.
We've seen a decline in Walker Lake as water is used upstream for agriculture, primarily, and other uses as well. And then we see less water going to the lake at the bottom. And the lake doesn't have a water right, quote unquote. And so we can use markets, for instance, like some of the market programs in the Walker Basin, to essentially buy water and send it down to the lake.
The Walker Basin Conservancy is using water markets in their efforts to restore Walker Lake.
Yeah, so here at the Walker Basin Conservancy, we work with farmers and ranchers to increase the flows of the Walker River onto Walker Lake and to restore a fishery at Walker Lake. Accordingly, we use a market approach to purchase irrigation rights and convert those to stream flows. So we basically provide water rights to the Walker River and Walker Lake. So over the last 15 years, we've worked with 155 farmers and ranchers on temporary and permanent in-stream flow projects.
In partnership with the Walker River Irrigation District, the Walker Basin Conservancy temporarily leases storage water rights from farmers to increase flows to Walker Lake. They also purchase farmlands and their water rights from willing sellers. For the Conservancy, these markets are an essential tool in restoring Walker Lake's volume and decreasing its salinity. These efforts are also intended to help with recovery of the lake's fisheries.
The truth is, in our region and in many regions throughout the western United States, we are irrigating more acreage than we can sustain. At the end of the day, if we want to have a fishery in the Walker River system at the bottom of the system, we've got to reduce the irrigated footprint within the Walker River Basin. That's a hard truth, but we take a lot of ownership over what happens with land in the long term.
The Walker Basin Conservancy water market programs have had good participation, but what the SNOWPACS team learned is that there are mixed opinions across water users in the basin.
Water is being purchased to send to Walker Lake. That certainly impacts our system as a whole, our irrigation system as a whole. We have leased our water rights to the Conservancy in past years. Well, my thoughts on the water markets are mixed because any water taken out of this valley impacts the valley and makes it less green, less productive overall. As farmers, we in general don't like to have water leave the valley. In general, we feel that trying to save Walker Lake is a huge waste of water and money, but it is what it is, and we will participate in it as it appears to be favorable to us.
For members of the Walker River Paiute tribe, whose reservation lands are located above Walker Lake, views and water use priorities differ.
We are called the Agaidakutta Numu, which is the trout eater people. Trout was a huge staple for our survival in our ancestors, but because of the lake diminishing and the salt levels rising, we have had our lake disappear from our from Agaipa, which we call Walker Lake, and it's almost like losing our identity as Agaidakutta Numu. Regarding the upstream users, we have seen them take more than they need, probably so that they could have more farms, more production, and make more money. And that also doesn't align with our values as Paiute people, because you're taking more so that you can have more and not leaving any for anybody else. And not only just us here on the reservation, but for the animals and the plants and the life of Walker Lake, It's creating an imbalance for us. And like I said before, nature finds a way to recreate that balance again.
While the Conservancy's water market programs aim to restore Walker Lake, some upstream water users are worried that they will reduce water available for agriculture and lead to unintended environmental and economic challenges.
In some other places in the Western United States, we've seen markets where lots of folks sell their water rights over time, and then their community ends up facing some really negative economic consequences. So if most of the water moves out, then the seed store might move out, and the tractor store might move out, and we have a tax base that's much lower in the county.
Reducing the water available to agriculture can also reduce local jobs, tax revenues, and diminish essential public services. For instance, some of the larger growers bring thousands of agricultural workers to the basin every year on temporary H-2A visas, boosting the local economy and more than doubling the size of the city of Yerington, the seat of Lyon County.
Well, and do people realize that Lyon County is the #1 ag producing county in the state of Nevada, and we're drying it up? What does that do to the entire economy of the state? Not just the basin here, but the entire state.
Some describe other environmental challenges that occur as water use priorities shift.
We might see even negative environmental impacts like growth of invasive weeds and dust on these properties where water's been removed from irrigated land.
If the ranch has the water, then somebody can acquire it, somebody can lease it, but without water, it basically turns into a weed patch unless it's re-veg properly. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't.
Removing water from farm fields can have other unintended effects.
Just because it takes away from the natural flows and the return flows. Because everything is now staying in stream. So it not only affects the surface water users as far as transportation losses and things downstream, but it affects all of your underground users because we are not regenerating the aquifer.
Water management in the Walker Basin has a rich history and a challenging future. Through many conversations with water users across the Walker Basin, the SNOWPACS team came to appreciate the complex decisions water users face in a changing climate.
Through those conversations and discussions, we got, I think, a much fuller view of the complexity of the issues in the Walker, which hopefully allowed us to do a better job of modeling the system, and also what the most pressing questions are. So hopefully when the project is done, our research will have touched on a number of issues that are kind of pivotal to addressing the challenges posed by changes in snowpack and changes in snowpack-derived water supplies for the Walker.
The SNOWPACS team has concluded that water markets can be more effective when designed and administered locally by the very same water right holders who choose to participate. As our climate and values change, we will need a flexible system of water management that can adapt to these changes.